Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host, Samit Paul, and it's on to the next one as far as Milan are concerned as they face Roma on Friday night at the San Siro. Tonight's order of play for the pod is as follows, discussing possible changes versus Roma following on from the defeat to Napoli. Is it time for a system change away from the 4-3-3? I asked on Twitter, what's your worst Milan memory? And we'll dive into the team news, stats behind Milan-Roma. First up though, let's talk about changes. Look, I think the first place we've got to look is at the defence. I think that was the main concern against Napoli, especially in the last 25 minutes of that game. The first change that I would like to see made is Diego Laxalt coming in for Ricardo Rodriguez. I watched Roma against Atalanta on Monday night. Great game, 3-3 draw. The man that stood out for me the most in the early stages of the game, and I immediately looked at and thought, right, we're in trouble with him, was Chenzi Gunda. Going up against Rodriguez, I think he's going to absolutely destroy him. He's got trickery, he's got pace, he'll apply pressure on the ball when Rodriguez is in possession. And as we've seen last season and in the opening game this year, Rodriguez is slow, he's very susceptible to being caught out with a ball over the top and behind, and he's very nervous on the ball. I think it's a recipe for disaster, so the first change I would definitely make is Laxalt for Rodriguez. Again, Laxalt, he's very versatile. He can play left back, left mid, left wing. He looks defensively astute to me from what I've seen of him. Obviously, he's got a bit about him going forward as well, but defensively, with his pace, I think he's a much better option to go up against Under and try and keep him quiet. So Rodriguez out, Laxalt in for me first up. Second change I'll be making is Caldara to come in for Musacchio. I think Musacchio played well for about 50 minutes. I think he reflected the Milan performance in general against Napoli. I think he looked composed, comfortable, pretty decent overall defensively for the first 50. And then as we kind of capitulated and fell off the pace and had no answer, I felt like he was a weak link at the back. And that's not to say Romagnoli was much better. I think he was guilty as well. He takes some responsibility, but Rodriguez and Calabria as well, of course. So the whole back line didn't really cover themselves in glory. But for me, Musacchio, I would take him out. I think we bought Caldara this summer for a reason. I do want to see that partnership with Romagnoli flourish as soon as possible. So let's bring him in, I think, and shore up things at the back along with Laxalt. And then the third change, of course, is Calhanoglu coming back from suspension. He comes in for Borini on the left flank. Self-explanatory. I don't really think I need to go into much detail about this one, but let's just hope that he can build on last season. Rough first half of the season for the Turkish international, but we saw how good he was in the second half when he finally got settled, match fit, confident. He was a real creative spark for us in the final third, so it's going to be great to see him back on the left flank. Hopefully, everyone's giving him the big build-up that he comes back and gives us that spark, but let's see if he can deliver, and I think he will. So definitely happy to see him back, and of course, if it means relegating Borini to the bench and not seeing him playing in an attacking position, even though he got an assist last week and he was as tireless in his effort as ever, I think it's always a good thing to have Calhanoglu coming in to the team. On to the talk about a system change. Gattuso has predominantly used the 4-3-3 since he came in charge. He's been very rigid. He's not really messed around with it. I think he experimented once or twice last season going back to a back three when he first came in. But overall, he obviously prefers the 4-3-3. It has its strengths, of course. We do have players that suit the roles in that system. Suso out right, Calhanoglu on the left, Higuain now going through the middle. And then you've got that combination in midfield with Biglia, Kessie and Bonaventura, giving you defensive solidity, or at least we hope they do, and they do a better job of it than that against Napoli. Kessie's sort of energy going box to box, and then Bonaventura's creativity through the middle. So there is, on paper, a very good balance there. However, it hasn't really been that way effectively on a consistent basis, and we've seen the frailties there as recently as last weekend. My thoughts is that I would like to see us go to a 4-2-3-1 at some point. Again, it's all predominantly going to be based on when Gattuso feels confident enough to experiment, to go with it. When's the right time to try it? We're in a results-based business here. He wants to play this new brand of football where we're playing out from the back, but is he brave enough to change the system and kind of risk having to potentially, if it doesn't work against Roma, then, he's going to switch back to a 4-3-3. It's disruption. There's no sort of consistency there for the team. The roles might get a bit skewed and we've probably create more problems. So I think he will continue with the 4-3-3, but, a 4-2-3-1 really does look good on paper. Donnarumma in goal, of course. Calabria, Caldara, Romagnoli, Laxalt at the back in a 4. Kessie, Biglia in the 2, sitting in front of the defence. And then obviously you've got Kessie potentially giving us that little burst from midfield as well. Suso, Bonaventura, Calhanoglu, behind Higuain. I think you're looking at an abundance of creativity. Those three will, of course, have to do their fair share of tracking back. You know, if we're going to play such an attacking system, they're going to have to do defensive work as well. But we've seen it with Calhanoglu, tracking back and working hard. Bonaventura puts a shift in every time he takes to the pitch. Suso would probably be a bit of a liability, if I'm being honest. I do feel like he is quite lazy at times. You know, you can see him half-heartedly kind of track back. He does try to make it look like he's making the effort, but I don't think he effectively defends. So he needs to do better if we do switch to a 4-2-3-1. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see that formation at some point. Whether or not we have to wait till the Europa League, the Coppa Italia, something like that, I don't know. But I think we're going to continue with the 4-3-3. I wrote a piece today about how I thought the sort of brand of football, the ideas, the ideology that Gattuso has clearly from the Real Madrid friendly that we saw before the season, and of course the game against Napoli. I think he wants to play this possession-based game. He wants to build from the back, and if you've got players like Romagnoli and Caldara in defence, comfortable, composed on the ball, and you're looking further up the field with Bonaventura, Calhanoglu, Suso, those are a lot of technically gifted players. So I think it's more a case of adjusting to the opposition, understanding roles better and getting the ball to those technically gifted players quicker. I'm fully on board with it. I think it's far too early to start criticising Gattuso and trying to argue that we should scrap it immediately. I think there were positive signs against Napoli. We went to Naples and for 50 minutes we were 2-0 up and we looked relatively composed and in control of the game. Our game management was pretty good. As soon as that first goal went in, everything went to you know what. So I think personally we're on the right track. It just needs more hours on the training pitch. It needs more analytical work with the players, individual support, i.e. with what Gattuso was saying about Bakayoko, helping him and getting rid of those defects in his game. I think it's definitely heading in the right direction, and I just think it just needs more work and more confidence to get these players composed in possession, to cut out the mistakes and kind of play this brand of football. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a positive way forward. We've all been screaming for an entertaining brand of football at Milan. You know, we haven't had the players to play that kind of game in recent years. We've now finally got a team of technically gifted players. I would love to see us play that kind of brand of football. So let's just hope that Gattuso and the players can perfect it over the coming weeks. And the early doubts that we've got, yes, you know, I agree. We had heart attacks galore against Napoli, the way that we were taking risks at the back. Donnarumma looks a bit uneasy in possession to start with, so that's an immediate concern. But I think with time, it can get better, and hopefully we can see that blossom even further. Just a few of your comments on the system change. At the Milanisti 11, at the moment, I don't think we need to move away from the 4-3-3. However, I would put Laxalt in ahead of Rodriguez. We need more intensity and flair, and frankly, Rodriguez doesn't cut it for me. Completely agree with you, Joe. As I mentioned earlier, Laxalt for Rodriguez against Roma is one of my top changes. I think it's got to be made. I think he offers more than Rodriguez going forward. Similar, if not better, defensive shift than he can as well. So Laxalt over Rodriguez for me, and like I said, I'm more than happy to stick with the 4-3-3 for now. At Borry Canes, it's high time we stop starting players like Ricardo Rodriguez and Barini. I personally think it's clear we need to also try a new formation like 4-2-3-1. I completely agree with you on that one. We at least need to try it. We have so many attackers now. Higuain was lost in the 4-3-3 formation. Granted that we were playing away in Napoli, but I think Higuain will succeed in a more attacking formation. Right now, we're not utilising him. Also, Barini should play as a right back. He's best at that position. I have no words for our defensive midfield position other than we need to do way better. Also, Caldara should start. Completely agree with you, Borry. Rodriguez and Barini, the first two names out of the team sheet for me. Laxalt and Calhanoglu in, hopefully, sooner rather than later. Agree with you on the 4-2-3-1, as I mentioned. I would like to see us try it at least and see how we get on. I think it would be effective for the players that we've got. And yes, agree with you that I think Higuain would, the amount of creativity, the three behind him, creating chances for him, I think that's a recipe for success. But we'll have to wait and see if it's used or not. Barini, right back, honestly, I think in terms of work ethic and effort and energy that he provides, I don't actually mind seeing him in a kind of defensive role, but if you've got Calabria and Conti, then I think the less we see of Barini, the better. But again, if he's played in a defensive position, then I've got less of a problem being in the starting lineup. It's when he's in a more advanced position where I start to get a little bit frustrated. So yeah, and yeah, agreed, Caldara should start, and which is all indications ahead of the game suggest that he is going to come in, so that's good news. At Spidey0816, changes I would make are Lax out for Ricardo Rodriguez and the obvious Calhanoglu for Borini. Everything else is the same. For me, I would keep the system if we were to change. I'm a fan of the 4-4-2, but we don't have anywhere near the depth at striker for this. Yep, agreed with you as well. Calhanoglu in for Borini and Lax out in for Rodriguez. Definitely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the 4-4-2 is another option, but you're right. I think, we've got Higuain and Cutrone up front, and beyond that, there's nothing there. So if we get an injury or whatever, there's no real ability to change that unless we go back to a one-man up front system. So maybe we will see it, the 4-2 up top when we need to, maybe when we're chasing games, and we'll see how that affects it and if it's successful. But yeah, that's also an option. At Navjot4664, I'd like to revisit your thoughts on the lack of a playmaker. The game against Napoli was terrible, simply because we threw the game away. Also, the thought of Conti and Lax out on the flanks is insane. Can't wait for the duo to play alongside Caldara and Romagnoli. Also, I'd probably start Hakan Calhanoglu on the left and use Halilovic as a first sub in case we fail to score in the first half. He can offer us what none of our other midfielders can. The 4-3-3 works just fine, but the team will take time to work together. Yeah, Navjot, I mean, agreed with you. Conti and Laxalt coming in on the flanks, giving us that pace and attacking threat, and also being able to defend astutely. I think they're going to have a major influence on us when they come back. When Conti comes back and Laxalt is given an opportunity. Conti for us first and foremost. Hopefully he just makes a full recovery. He's had 2 really serious back-to-back injuries. Just fingers crossed that he comes back fully fit, steers clear of further setbacks, and I think it will take time to see him get back to his best form, but I do believe he will, and he'll be a great asset to add to the team. So fingers crossed on that front. But yeah, Laxalt for Rodriguez as soon as possible. Would love to see that happen. Agreed with you with Calhanoglu on the left. I think, we all kind of want to see him in a central role as well. So I think he'd flourish more there and kind of answer your question about a lack of playmaker, perhaps as a proper number 10. But with Hakan on the left, Suso on the right, Bonaventura going through the middle, assuming Jack now hits top form. Great goal against Napoli. Let's hope that's just a sign of things to come. I think the 3 of them combining and working in tandem to support Higuain is looking pretty good. So let's just hope that it looks as good as we think it will. And yep, agreed with you. 4-3-3 works just fine. That's a fair point. And it just takes time for the team to work together. Agreed. Like I said, I think it applies to the system, the way of playing, the brand of football that Gattuso wants to play. I think we just need a matter of time. That's why I was in such strong disagreement with the amount of criticism that Gattuso got after the game. Yes, he made mistakes. He started Borini for a start in an attacking role, which is a mistake for me, in my opinion, especially if you've got Laxalt and Castillejo on the bench who can both play that role. He brought on Bakayoko for Biglia when perhaps it was better off, changing system and just going defensive and shoring things up in front of the defence rather than bringing off a defensive midfielder for a like for like and then seeing Bakayoko bomb forward at every opportunity. So that was a mistake in itself, even though I thought at the time the substitute made sense because Biglia was having an absolute nightmare. But yeah, 4-3-3, let's stick with it against Roma, and let's just hope that with more time and patience that this team can start stringing everything together and we'll see the best of them. At Sei Pops, how's the gameplay we saw going to influence our season? That's the build-up play from the back. It seemed very fragile against Napoli. Against Roma, removing Ricardo Rodriguez for Laxalt, Borini obviously, and maybe Abate for Calabria. Yeah, again, I think, we did look fragile against Napoli, fair point. Like I said, it was very kind of nerve-wracking to watch us in the first 50 minutes as well, trying to play out from the back, instantly being put under pressure. Donnarumma kicking it out of play, or Masaccio and Romagnoli trying to find an option but couldn't, and it was kind of like sideways as well, for the most part going backwards. So we're clearly not 100% comfortable with it yet, but I do believe that eventually, with time, with perfecting it, working hard in training on it, I think it will start to flow well, and we'll see it be a really effective part of our game. It is the thing, isn't it, now? You got Neuer started it with the goalkeepers. Now every goalkeeper wants to be an outfield player. You've got Alisson as well, obviously, well known for it. And obviously, the influence of Barcelona's and the Dutch teams of, total football and playing it out from the back, and the build-up play coming from the central defenders now who have to be involved in that aspect of it. I think it's all part of the parcel of the modern-day game, and Gattuso's clearly identified it. He wants to follow the trends, and I think he's got the players. Like I said, I think everybody that I've mentioned there, Romagnoli, Caldara, Bonaventura, Calhanoglu, Suso, all these players are good on the ball in possession. So I think we have got the players to do it. I just think it's a matter of time. On to your worst Milan memories. At Milanisti 11, my worst Milan memory has to be the 4-0 defeat to Barcelona in the Champions League. It was a sad day. I will never forget Niang's miss. I don't think any of us will. Had he scored, we probably would have gone through. But alas, Barcelona had Messi and one of the best teams in football history. We haven't had a player like him since Kaká left for Real Madrid. It was the first hint that Milan was in descent. Yep, that was a pretty bad one. I've got to admit, you're right on that. And, you know, Niang's miss will forever haunt us. It could have been all very, very different if he had put that one away. But, yeah, that was a pretty bad night for us, unfortunately. At Spidey0816, one of my worst recent memories was last year's thrashing we took from Juve in the cup final. Was so excited, felt we had a chance to at least make it a game. Then we just get ran off the pitch. I have faith this weekend we can get a win. Çalhanoğlu back and he can make a difference with creativity. Again, absolutely. I think we all went into that game thinking we had a really good chance of winning it. It was seen as like a kind of big landmark sort of possibility of overcoming that hurdle of winning a trophy, beating a top team like Juve. Gattuso was building momentum. It all felt like it was moving in that right direction for us to really make a statement. And it went very badly wrong, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's one of the ones as well. Navjot4664, worst memory, Kaká to Madrid. Agreed. That's another really painful memory. I think it was the summer before, wasn't it, where he was linked with a move to Man City, and that didn't go through. We all got excited, thinking, "Okay, brilliant, he's off the market, he's going to stay now." And then the next summer, I believe it was, Real Madrid came in and he left, and that was a very difficult day, really difficult time to see him leave. Obviously, then he had his struggles, never really was the same at Real Madrid. Had his problems with Mourinho. So it was really sad to see from both angles, from the club and for him. So yeah, that was a bad one. My worst memory, of course, has to be Istanbul. Not really going to go into detail. We all know what happened. I haven't actually watched that game back since, and I don't think I ever will. So, you know, anytime it may come on in the background, that channel's definitely getting changed. Anytime someone mentions it, definitely getting ignored. So yeah, Istanbul, of course, I think that's going to be a big choice for a lot of people. So yeah, sadly, but that one got away from us. At Samir Mohammed 72 said the ref not allowing Montari's goal versus Juve and losing against Juve in the Coppa Italia. Yeah, agreed. Another two really bad ones. Montari's goal was a joke. That was so far over the line, it was ridiculous. If only we had VAR. And yeah, losing against Juve in the Coppa Italia again. Yeah, that's a fair point. Samir also had same formation with Hakan in and Ricardo Rodriguez out. He also agrees that yes, we should use the 4-2-3-1. We've got the perfect players for a 4-2-3-1 formation. Agreed. And Samir also asks, do you agree with the Biglia hate? I do, to an extent. I've never really been particularly sold on him. You know how I feel about him. I think he's a solid defensive player, but in terms of his sort of output, his ability to offer something in an attacking sense, I've just never really rated him. However, the odd thing is that we always seem to look worse when he's off the pitch. We saw it a couple of times last season. We saw it again at Napoli. Even though he was a liability himself, giving the ball away, being really sloppy, when he went off, we looked like we were all over the place and we were just vulnerable to Napoli's attacks. So it's a really weird one, but I agree with the hate to an extent. I think we can do better. We need to do better moving forward. We need to find a new signing to fill that deep line role for the long term beyond Biglia. But I think in terms of importance to the team right now, I don't think we can ignore it. I think he has to play. Bakayoko clearly can't step in and be trusted. So I think we're going to have to stick with Biglia, with Kessie and Bonaventura in that midfield three, unfortunately. But fingers crossed, you know, he did look really good in spurts last season as well. It wasn't all bad. So let's hope he can reach his top form and impress us. So a quick roundup in terms of lineups and team news and some head-to-head stats for Roma. Probable lineups: Milan are looking like they're going to play Donnarumma in goal. Abate is going to get the nod at right back, according to La Gazzetta dello Sport. Caldara, Romagnoli and Rodriguez will make up the rest of the back line. Kessie, Biglia, Bonaventura in midfield, and then Suso, Higuain and Çalhanoğlu up top in a trident in a 4-3-3. Roma, Olsen, Santon, Fazio, Manolas and Kolarov in the back. Nzonzi, De Rossi, Cenzig Under, Pastore, El Shaarawy and Dzeko up front. Just thinking back to the game against Atalanta, they do look like they've got vulnerabilities at the back. I think we can get at them. Fazio, very slow. Manolas got caught out by Duvan Zapata's strength on a couple of occasions. Kolarov is not the quickest, and Zonzi and De Rossi getting back. I think if we break between the lines and kind of get in behind that midfield too, we can really cause them problems. Under, again, like I mentioned earlier, I'll highlight him as the danger man because I think if he goes up against Ricardo Rodriguez, we've got a serious problem. El Shaarawy coming back, of course, is always a danger. And Dzeko, we've got Romagnoli and Caldara have to stand up to him and really deal with his physical, aerial, and just general threat. And I think we've got a great chance of getting something from the game. No suspensions to talk of. Calhanoglu's back, of course, but Conte, Zapata and Strinic are still all out with injuries and health concerns. Head-to-head, Milan have won just one of the last 6 meetings with Roma. That was, of course, the 2-0 win at Stadio Olimpico last season with goals from Cotrone and Calabria. However, Roma have won 4 of the other 5 games. 3 of those have come at the San Siro. So clearly the recent history isn't good. It's quite strange because obviously the same sort of scenario was with Napoli last week when I was looking at our head-to-head with them. We haven't really performed well against the top teams in recent years. Continued against Napoli, unfortunately. So let's fingers crossed that we can kind of sort that out against Roma. My player to watch for this one is Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Coming back from suspension fresh, I think he proved himself to be a very, very important player for us last season. He ended up with 8 goals and 13 assists in 45 games in all competitions. That was 8 assists and 6 goals in 31 Serie A appearances. So he definitely turned things around in the second half of the season, and I think he's going to be one of our key players yet again this season. Let's hope he can hit the ground running, come in and spark us into life at the San Siro and give us a night to remember. So, fingers crossed, everything falls into place. We need to bounce back after the Napoli defeat. I think we can. I think we will. Let's hope we see the more confidence and composure on the ball if we're going to continue to play this brand of football. And fingers crossed, let's just get this result, bounce back and get going before the international break as well coming up. So guys, that's a wrap for this pod. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for your comments on Twitter. Always appreciated. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at MilanTalk1. I'll be back on Friday night with my Roma player ratings and thoughts. Fingers crossed we're talking about a victory and 3 points in the bag. But until then, thanks for listening and Forza Milan.